Hi, today I'm going to be going over my deck list and my matches from the Vintage Challenge on the 30th of November. While the tournament did happen, almost 2 weeks ago, I still think that they're relevant results, and I think that even for myself, I like the idea of going over those matches, and therefore I think it's just a good idea to go over them. And might as well record it because some people might be able to get a better idea of how DPS or my specific list, I guess, kind of plays out. And I think that's a resource that is kind of lacking in terms of Vintage. So yeah, I figured I might as well record it. Maybe nobody watches it. Doesn't really matter to me. So all right, let's go over the list really quickly. So mana base pretty stock. Couple things. I in this tournament decided to run a white splash, and I've kind of been experimenting with that white splash a bit since then. And that is primarily, as you can see, for Lavinia. Actually, it's only for Lavinia in the specific list. Lavinia, in my opinion, is like an incredibly strong card in Vintage. I just think it's able to get you a ton of mileage as a creature, and I think that there's really not a lot of removal in the format. In almost every deck, you can only run like 4 to 6 removal pieces, I think, specifically, and a lot of them are like pretty flexible cards, like Assassin's Trophy, which is kind of a slow effect just for Lavinia when you're playing Vintage. Spending 2 mana on a creature doesn't feel great. So I think Lavinia is super good in the format, just period. I think the power level is there. And I think that DPS has 2 issues. Well, not issues, but has 2 weaknesses, I guess. Is that it struggles a lot against force effects. And I think that's like any combo deck in general. It's just like being Force of Willed or being Force of Vigor, which is more rare. Or Mind Break Trapped, Ravenous Trap. What else? I think that's it. I mean, I guess Mental Misstep kind of counts in that. These, or Misdirection, but Misdirection is kind of not that good against the deck. So those are all pretty difficult effects for DPS to fight because obviously they're free interaction and you have a hard time being able to beat that. Or I guess they're just interaction period, and there's a ton of decks in Vintage that are trying to interact. And I think that having some sort of like, not necessarily trump card, but having some sort of card that gets you a lot of mileage against those matchups, which in the past has been Defense Grid. In this tournament, I was running both. Since then, I've changed my mind on that, but I'll get back to that later. I think having a card like Defense Grid in Lavinia to kind of get you a lot of mileage against those decks and be able to defend yourself is pretty important. Because I do think that, especially for this tournament, a bug had been popping up in the last week before. So now it's been like all over the place, whatever, people are used to it. But like that specific week, that was the first week it had appeared. And I felt like there was going to be a lot of bug decks. And a lot of the bug pilots were toying around with their number of Force of Vigors, and they all had 4 Force of Wills. So knowing that, I was even more inclined to run Lavinia. Obviously, you can like argue that, those matchups were also probably going to play like Pushers in the board and Assassin's Trophy in the main. But I think that's an exchange I'm willing to make when I'm playing against Bug. So that's the first thing that Lavinia helps with, and the first weakness that I want to mention. But another weakness is PO. PO is not a green matchup. The issue with PO is that their combo requires less deck slots, and that way they're able to run Force of Will and they're able to run more interaction. And at the same time, they get that speed. Maybe not as fast as DPS, I suppose, but they get that potential for a lot of speed coupled with interaction. And as a combo deck, that really, the only benefit that DPS has, I guess, in the format is kind of the speed that it has access to. I think that PO is very difficult because it kind of gets that speed and at the same time is able to interact with us, and we're not really able to play on both of those axes. On both, I don't know the role of access, but both those playing fields, I guess. And you know, PO, I think it's no secret that it's all over the place. So I felt like Lavinia as a hedge against that deck was kind of important. So that's the White Splash. That's the first part. Yeah. All right. So going over the list really quickly. There's some other stuff, but anyway, I'll mention it when I get to it. So pretty standard list. I personally don't run like the Bloodstained Mire Scalding Tarn. I don't think that's really that necessary. I just run 2 Fire Strands because that's what I have access to. Here we have the Scrub Land for the White Splash. A lot of people run lands in the sideboard. I personally don't like that. I think that there are enough matchups in the format. How should I say that? I think there are a ton of matchup. I think every matchup almost in the format requires you to like at least have some sort of help from the sideboard to be able to fight them. Your main deck is not usually strong enough to fight through all of those boarded matches. And I feel that while lands can be good in certain matchups, they just I just like having more high impact cards. So I wanted to run 12 lands, and I wanted to run, obviously, if I was going to run 12 lands in the main board, wasn't going to run any in the sideboard, and I was going to play White Splash, I had to add a white land in the main board. I think once I wanted to get a Tundra, but I almost always wanted to get a Scrub Land. I think it's the better land if you only got to run one of them between Tundra and Scrub Land. So I was running that, and I wasn't running Library. I don't think Library is good enough in DPS. I think it's way too slow. I think with PO being at its peak, I think with Bug being able to lock you down super effectively, I think the format's in a place right now where you can't afford to be running a land that just taps your colorless and is super, super slow. And in most matchups, you're just not gonna be able to take advantage of it. I think Xerax is not even that bad of a matchup, so I'd rather not be running Library. And I ran a Water Grave in this tournament, and that's just because I personally use a renting service. I use Mana Shooters, and I just couldn't afford the Underground Sea, I guess. Well, I guess that's what happened. So I personally run a Water Grave, and I ran a Water Grave in my list, but obviously I wouldn't advise it. I would always advise to run as many duels, like all the duels in every deck that you play in Vintage. I do think that my Water Grave might have cost me maybe a game, and it did make a lot of situations more difficult. So if you can help it, don't run Shocks. If you don't have a choice, I think it's possible to play this with Shocks, especially if you're on a renting service. So yeah, quick rundown. So other than that, list is pretty stock. I wasn't running Lotus Petal. I was running a Cabal Ritual because of the running service. This is definitely something that I was like very frustrated by. I think that if you can afford it, again, you should always be trying to play Lotus Petal. It's too good not to. As you can see later on, I like after the tournament, I bought 4 Deltas. And that was, again, to experiment with new cards, to be able to have like a lot more breathing room in the way that I was running cards for the deck. And since then, obviously, I removed Water Grave and I just got another Underground Sea. So I did that right away. And I started playing Lotus Petal. This is actually my list currently. Later on, I realized how ridiculous it was to be running a White Splash and not be taking advantage of Mentor in this list. I think Mentor is extremely good. And obviously I ran an Underground Sea. I added a land, as I said, because of like the not playing sideboard lands. I didn't like that, so I went for I decided to add a Tundra to the deck. And other than that, I added the Lotus Petal, and I removed Defense Grid, and I removed Mental Misstep because I think it's might not be good enough. I'll get back to this list though. So 2 Defense Grids. I think at the time that was stock. I think it might have gone down to 1 since then, and I think people are playing around with numbers. I think 2 is a pretty fine number. I personally, initially, again, I was The decision to board in Lavinia is something that I decided, I think, the morning of, or maybe the night before while I was taking a shower. I was like, Lavinia sounds cool. I need to try it for tomorrow's vintage challenge. So I still was running a bunch of defense grids because I personally felt like the card's really good. Since then, I've changed my mind. I'd rather be playing Lavinias and less defense grids. And I think playing both of them is kind of rough because at a certain point, you have too many effects that help you in the matchup. If that makes any sense. Like it's just hard to have that many effects on the main board, and I think that you have to make room for other matchups to be helped. Obviously, when I started adding Monastery Mentor as in this, I mentioned just before, like, you know, I had to cut some stuff, and I think cutting like those sorts of cards that don't actually directly help in your main game plan is probably the first thing you gotta cut, more so than, you know, like a preordain. Although preordain, again, pretty close on the cutting board, so pretty stock mana. I run top. I know not everybody runs it. I personally think that it's good enough, and I think it's good enough just on its own, and it's very, very, very good against with Ballista Citadel. So personally, I think you should run it. So yeah, I like on top. I think it's a good way also to, when you're like comboing off, or when you're doing like early turns where you produce a lot of mana and maybe you're not really gonna go off, but you just sort of need to get ahead. I think it's a very good way of using that extra mana. And, you know, again, against Xerox, you know, that kind of stuff, it does get a lot of mileage in those matchups. I ran Mental Misstep back then. I've seen a lot of people cut it, and I would have to agree. Well, Misstep is really good. There's so much other stuff that you can try in the deck, and it is very, very hit or miss, especially against matchups like Dredge and Shops, and I think those are popular enough that I can't really justify running it. I think it's super close. I think I would never fault anybody for running it, but it just wasn't good enough for me. So I personally like don't want to play with it anymore, but it's super close. Other than that, is there really anything else that is weird on this list? I don't think so. 2 defense grid's pretty normal. Yeah, so the rest of the list really do stock. The sideboard is a little strange, I guess, to some people. As I mentioned before, I don't run lands. I run Blightsteel. I think that having Blightsteel as an option against Dredge, obviously it depends on the Dredge builds. There are builds that run Dread Return Nation Rider, and those are difficult. Those are more difficult, but really not every version does run it. So personally, I think Colossus is good enough against Dredge. I think it's very good in general. And I think against Shops, it absolutely is good enough. They just don't run Manowar anymore. I think every once in a while I see it as a one of, but it's still, I think it's absolutely worth it. And there are a bunch of matchups that I think boarding Colossus is absolutely fine, and or you have a bunch of cards that you don't really want to have in your main deck. So I think Colossus is the place to be. Personally, I think I'd be very hard pressed not to play it in the 75. Also, you know, defense grid. While I was playing while I was trying Lavinias in that tournament, I still felt like defense grid was really, really strong. So I felt like having the third was absolutely worth it. Since then, I've gone down to like I think 1. Lavinia, I was running 2 in the event. You know, it was a new card I wanted to try out. I felt like 3 was a lot to have. I didn't know if it was even that good. Since then, I've moved to 3. Yixna Jailer. This is something that I think is pretty controversial. You know, obviously, we're just playing a card game. It's not controversial, but it's more surprising, I guess, to people who do play DPS more regularly. I am totally... I've played with Tormod's Script a fair bit. I think it's an extremely good card. I think it helps a lot against Dredge. I'm never going to decline that is the case. That being said, my issue with Tormod's Script is that while yes, I think you can make it a lot better by just, you know, learning the timings of it. I think that Dredge is a matchup. This is hard to explain. It's like a lot clearer in my head. I think that in almost all the matches that I played against Dredge, I felt like Crypt was almost good enough, but most of the time, if I was, you know, playing Crypt, yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you're gonna be running Crypt is fine, but I think that against Dredge is so resilient to Grave Hate that I don't think it's good enough to like gain you multiple turns. I think it usually gains you 1 or 2 turns, and I just don't think that's like acceptable, if that makes sense. Like I think that your main deck is not consistent enough at getting these insane top 10 cards in your deck to be able to consistently get that Karma Script to gain a turn and then the next turn be able to combo off. I personally have not felt like the deck is able to support that, and in that case, I think you have to go up another level to like actual permanent hate. You can't run Recipes because it damages your game plan. I don't think you can run Leyline at the Void because of Bull Assist to the Bell. And obviously it's like so much worse when you're comboing off. Like it's really, really hard to cast. And I don't think you should run Containment Priest because I think Containment Priest is not as good as most people want it to be. I think it's really good, but the issue is that no, that's not true. I think Containment Priest is fine. I think it's good enough. I think in terms of what DPS wants, in terms of that or I guess in terms of that lock piece, like that piece that just like makes your opponent unable to win. I do think Containment Priest does that job. That being said, I think Dixter Jailer is better, I guess. It's just, it costs the same mana. It's easier to cast for you because you don't have to go for your White Splash, and it also locks out Cabal Therapies. So for me, it's just kind of a, why the hell would I not play Jailer, Yeah, so that's my reasoning. I think it's extremely, extremely close between Crypt and Jailer. Personally, I just really like Jailer as a card, and I just had pretty poor experiences with Crypt prior to the tournament, and I haven't really looked back since. So I think Jailer, maybe not the place to be, but I think it's a place to be, and I think it's a very defendable card choice in my opinion. I really like Circumvent against, again, as I mentioned before, I think PO is a pretty difficult matchup. I think, while I know that Cherry X-Man runs a, like, Rug Oko PO list, which obviously you don't get to play Sacrament against that because they have enough win cons to not care. I think the most common PO list, like the one that almost everybody else plays but him, those do run, like, maximum 2 win cons in the main board, so I think that Sadistic Sacrament is very good against them. I think against DPS in the mirror it's super good as well. I mean, those are pretty much the only 2 matchups where you do board it in, but I think that's good enough to have as a card. I think they're both matchups where you can definitely use all the help you can get. I run pushes. I ran 2 in that tournament. I almost never boarded it in because it's just really not that common to face survival. And I guess it's fine against no, it's pretty much the only matchup where you boarded in is survival and DNT or ENT, whatever you want to call it. And I just don't think you end up playing against those matchups often enough to play it. Oh yeah, another matchup is Bug, but then that's also after, like, since I went up to 3 of Aeneas, and I think that's a very, very good card against Bug. I think we have enough stuff against Bug that I play in Push, which is not the best card against Bug, is probably not that worth it. So because it just doesn't catch enough matchups, I decided to remove one of them. In that tournament, I played 2, didn't board it in at all, I think. Maybe I boarded in once against Bug, I'm not sure. So, I think it's a fine card in the sideboard. I think you should play at least 1, maybe. But I think, like, if somebody was telling me they didn't play any in the sideboard, I really wouldn't think that they're crazy. Hercules Recall. Everybody plays 3 Hercules Recalls in the side. It's just, you need it to be able to fight against shops. I'll get back on that because I had an interesting experience against shops in that event. But I think that, yeah, you should run 3 recalls. I think everybody who plays DPS should run 4 recalls in the 75. Fluster Storms, I think Fluster Storm is like a super, super, super flexible card in the sideboard of DPS, so I think you should play 2 personally. I don't think there's much else to say. I think it helps against DPS, against PO, it helps against every single other controlling deck that you play against. Just a really, really good card. I do think that it has some amount of friction with Defense Grid, but I don't think it's enough friction to not want to play it at all. So yeah, that's the 75. I don't really think there's that much else to be said about it. I felt pretty good about this list. Since then I changed it, and I feel even better about my 75 now. But oh right, yeah. So now I'll get I'll talk about the fragmentize and in the matches. But yeah, I really want to fragmentize instead of the push, I think. And I took out the defense grid to put another Lavinia. I've had really good experiences with Lavinia. Other than that, Cyborg's the same. I put him on a stream mentor instead of the defense grid in the main. I took out a what was it? Yeah, I took out a misstep for land, and I took out a Cabal Ritual for a Lotus Petal. The land in this case being Tundra. Just more flexible. I don't think you should have a basic. I think you might as well add a White Splash to help everything come together. So that's the 70. This is 75 for the event. I guess I'll get back in the match. All right, so here we are in match 1 and game 1 of the challenge. We're playing against Arfine or RFine. I don't know. Personally, I've never played against this opponent. I never played against them before. I hadn't seen them in leagues before, so I had no idea what they were on. That being said, R7 was insane. So we had, Sapphire and Lotus as early fast mana, coupled with Will, which is obviously nuts with Lotus. And we had a recall. Like, already with that 5, honestly, you can probably keep that any day. Or you should probably keep that any day. And then we had Misstep just for free interaction, and we had a recall, which is obviously the worst card in the hand, I guess. But again, it's just free to have, and it does add to tournament count if we're ever on that plan. And of course we have a land. I guess like having 2 lands would have been more ideal. Like I said, that recall maybe. Then again, we're drawing 3 with recall, and we're gonna be able to cast a second recall on a turn. So basically, the idea is we're gonna cast. So I'll just show you. Our opponent keeps 7 as well. So here, we just cast Sapphire. We recall. That resolves. We're pretty sure that they don't have force. It's not guaranteed, but we're pretty sure. So what we're gonna do is just make sure they don't have force, because them having force could kind of mess us up. Not really, but it's just a free duress to do. So I duress my opponent. With the plan of casting Lotus, Yawgmoth's Willing, and then being able to Lotus again, go recall, Mystical Tutor for Tinker, recall, and then Gataxian Probe. Sorry, not Gataxian Probe. Right, so here our opponent, they have a fine hand. Obviously this is Bug. I don't think this is an amazing hand to keep. I think it's fine. Like, you're probably going to be able to find some action with your Pyridane. That being said, obviously against us, it really does nothing. So here we take Pyridane. Now that I think about it, like, later on, I think that taking the Time Walk could have been better, because Mental Misstep was already a free counter for Pyridane, and that way it doesn't allow them to be able to... It doesn't allow them to top deck like a Moxen. Obviously, they only pay 3 from what I know, but I guess they could have... So they only pay 3 Moxen. And if they had drawn that, they could have time walked and then been able to play like Leovold, which would have been kind of problematic for us. So I think now that I think about it, I should have taken time walk. That being said, I took Pyridane, obviously being afraid of a force, but since we had Mental Misstep anyway, it didn't really matter. So here we go Lotus, then we Yawgmoth's Will, we cast Lotus again to go for a Ancestral Recall. First we cast Mystical Tutor, and then we Ancestral Recall. And here we have a free Brainstorm with the mana we have, so we just put Academy and a fetch land, I think. Yeah. So, they can possibly top deck with Force of Will, but I think the odds are so low of that we don't really have to worry. With this hand, what we get to do is just Dark Ritual. Now that I think about it, it's actually a pretty bad play. So I didn't actually have to play my land this turn. Since I knew I was going to go Tinker below Citadel, I didn't need to play land. I could have just Dark Ritual and then used the Sapphire to cast it. I think the reason I did this, and I think it's misguided, but I think the reason I did this was because I was afraid of Spell Pierce. And again, it doesn't really make sense because I had Mental Misstep in hand, so it didn't matter. So just a bad play. And I do think it matters because, you know, if you're going to be going off of Will Assisted, I'll be top decking your land could absolutely wreck you. So I think that's a pretty poor play. Anyway, we get a swamp, we Dark Ritual, we Tinker, and then we go for Ballistic Citadel. Our top card is a Dark Petition, and when we cast it, our opponent scoops the game. Right, so we're just going to go to game 2. I'm going to keep this in the same clip, I think. Right, then we go to game 2. We're on the draw, so obviously that's not preferable. We have a completely unkeepable hand here. I would never keep this in a million days. Dark Petition. We have Dark Petition, Cabal Ritual, Dark Petition with no lands to actually cast them. We have Ponder, which is fine. We have Top, which is very weak in this hand, so just not interested in this kind of hand. So we mulligan. This hand is super, super good. I guess I'm going to talk about the sideboarding. So here we sideboarded 2 Flusterstorms and 2 Lavinias. We did not sideboard in the Fatal Pushes, which I think might have been wrong. We kept the 2 defense within the main. We sideboarded out LED. I think against this deck, you're going to have much less room to go for broken early plays. So I think that LED is probably not the best thing to have in the main deck. I think Cabal Ritual, you know, is fast mana, but you have enough of that. Like, you can usually shave 1 Ritual, 1, like, LED, maybe some other stuff against these kind of decks. And then I shaved the Time Twister. I think because of them having Leovold and, you know, the 1 of Narset, I don't love it in the main deck. Maybe this is wrong. I'm personally someone who doesn't value Time Twister super highly in the main deck of DPS. I think a lot of other people do. That's my personal preference. Maybe that's wrong. Anyway, so then we sideboarded in 2 Flusterstorms and 2 Lavinias. Right? Yeah, and we sideboarded out Hurkyl's Recall as well, because Hurkyl's Recall is absolutely useless against our opponent. So this, you know, this 75 I think I'm fine with. Right. Then we keep this hand with, you know, a land, which is, you know, this is kind of rough because obviously we'd rather have 2 lands to be able to reliably cast Lavinia. That being said, we have access to Gitaxian Probe and Ponder to be able to find our second land. If we ever find a second land that isn't even like a white producing land, we can just Defense Grid. Or, we're almost always going to be able to cast Defense Grid as well. We have Dark Ritual just actually like get us there with the combo. And then we have a Storm for protection. Like, this hand is super, super good. I think... I think we bottomed Defense Grid because of the friction between it and Flusterstorm. I think this is pretty defensible because the way that we were set up, I think the chances were high enough that we were able to cast Lavinia reliably, and I'd rather cast Lavinia than Defense Grid. Maybe this is wrong. I think it's super close between the two, so I'm pretty safe with this play, but I think there's definitely an argument for bottoming the Flusterstorm. Alright, so they cast Deathfire Shaman. Obviously very good against us, but there's not much we can do about it. Here we're extremely happy with this top deck, and Short Recall is insane. And, you know, we did need something to kind of get us a little bit more velocity to be able to reliably like stay in the game, because, you know, Bug is able to trade with your resources very, very consistently. So here we play for the Delta first. I guess that's probably wrong. Like, we should just get Taxian Probe first without doing anything. But I don't think it's like very consequential. So we get Taxian Probe. We see a hand that is just Force of Vigor and Collector Roof. So at least we know like, basically this hand just tells us never go for any artifact based combo and you should probably be fine. Lavinia obviously helps against Force of Vigor, but even then they're probably going to be able to cast it pretty reliably with the Cran hand that they have. I think this is completely fine 7 for them. Maybe you could argue that they should have mulligan because they have access to Force of Will in the deck and they have pretty high odds of finding it. That being said, I think the chances that we're going to have a draw or a game plan that was going to rely on artifacts is probably pretty likely we happen not to, but that's another story. So this is nice because we know they have no interaction, and even if they draw, and even if they draw Force of Will, they can't actually do anything with it for like 2 turns. So we're really, really happy to see this. It also means we get to cast Instant Recall, which feels fantastic. We even got to top deck the land, which means we're always going to be able to cast Lavinia. We're feeling like we're on top of the world. Here, what I decide to do, and I don't think there's really any downside to doing this, or I guess, yeah, what I decide to do is that if they're going to top deck a Spell Pierce, no, I don't know why I did this. Oh, right. Jeez, I'm sorry, I'm a little sleepy right now. So we decide to, go for Instant Recall and Upkeep because we would have had to discard at the end of the turn. Obviously, getting that second Dark Petition feels pretty bad. Doesn't matter that much. Like, our hand is really good at the moment, so we don't really care. And we have a Mental Misstep, but obviously it's a little late because Deathrite Shaman is already on the board. So, not the best spot to be in, but really not the worst. They attack us with the Deathrite Shaman. Our Manifold is going to be useless, so we don't really care about that. And here, I think we just slam Lavinia. Like, it's just going to get us so much mileage in the game. And with the current hand that they have, they can't do anything about it, so we just slam it down. And we're pretty happy in our position with our position in the game. Right. So the Getaxian Probus gets countered. I believe in the chat, if I remember correctly, they were like, oh, whoops, sorry, that was a dumb move and all. Which, obviously it's always like, kind of, it feels bad when you accidentally do something like that. That could have very, very easily been avoided. They don't attack with Collector Roof. I think that's wrong. I think you're always going to be able to get attacks in with it. I'm never going to block with Lavinia. If I'm casting Lavinia, it's because I don't count on ever having it die. So I think that them not attacking is probably a little too conservative. So I personally would have done it. Right. So here, it's obviously kind of feels bad to be top decking these Mox Jets and these Manifolds, but we can't really complain. Like, we have access to Ponder and a lot of outs to go off with Dark Ritual and then Dark Petition. So we Ponder. Our Ponder lets us see Mystical Tutor, which we're over the moon to be seeing right now. And I believe right. So yeah, we see a Mystical Tutor, land, and a Dark Ritual if we're ever not able to get there. So I believe what we do is we put Dark Ritual, Fetish Strand, and Mystical Tutor in that order. Yeah, and then we draw a Mystical Tutor. Now that I think about it, no, this was fine. This was fine. Right. So I think what we do is we cast Manifold after that. So my idea with this was that I think we had decent chances of baiting our opponent into Force of Vigor. And I felt pretty happy with that likelihood. And here we're in a really good position. Like, basically we're going to get the land to be able to reliably cast Tinker. And we have Mystical Tutor to be able to fetch for it. The only thing that was kind of tricky in that spot was that we had, obviously, Bolas's Citadel is pretty rough. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit here. So obviously, Bolas's Citadel is a little rough against Force of Vigor, and because of that, if they didn't tap out during that turn, we were going to have to play around that. Again, our opponent cast something into Lavinia. I think the Getaxian Probe, they didn't say they felt like a dumbass, but I think with the Mox Emerald, sorry, not dumbass, a dummy. But I think with the Mox Emerald, they did say that. They don't attack with Collector Roof again, which I think is a little greedy. That being said, with our current hand, we would probably block, and we'd be really happy about it. So our opponent doesn't do anything. We go for we fetch first, which I think is probably reasonable. We get an island just to not take damage because we're going to go for Bolas's Citadel. Here again, one situation where having Water Gift definitely incentivizes me to get an island, and obviously that's not a good thing to have. So Mystical Tutor. We go get Tinker, of course. We don't have to untap it. We feel very happy with our position. And I think in this spot, Right. Yeah, that's the play I did. Sorry, I'm a little rusty right now on DPS. So what we do is to be able to have access to Fluster Storm to counter that Force of Vigor if they ever cast it, or Force of Will if they have it, and then if they did cast a Force of Will, they wouldn't be able to cast Force of Vigor anyway. So we're basically, this play allows us to be safeguarded from any force effect, essentially. The only thing this play was weak against was like a Spell Pierce, and we had Mental Misstep to counter that. So we were completely clear. We go for Dark Ritual because we're not going to need the back mana anyway. Then we Tinker, sacrificing the Mana Bolt. And then we're off to the races. So we get Ballista Citadel. We cast Nox of Fire. They try to cast Force of Vigor. Sorry about that. And then we counter it with Flusterstorm. And we cast a Kebble Ritual while it's on the stack just because it's kind of free and it gives us more storm count. It doesn't really matter, but might as well do it. And yeah, and then that's just a very easy win for us. We combo off. I'll keep showing this because why not? I cast a Time Walk, then I found a Dark Petition on the top of my deck. I went to get Tendrils because we were guaranteed to win, so I just mock shit and I Tendrils. Right. Very, very easy win. And we are 1-0 in the event. I think this game was a pretty good example of some very, very, very powerful hands. Lavinia putting in a lot of work. Flusterstorm as well. And I think it was mostly our opponent keeping both games kind of a sketchy hand. Like, I don't think their hand was terrible, but I think that them keeping hands that are burn 9 okay against this sort of matchup is a little too loose. I think that they have a lot of tools in their main deck to be able to fight us. And I think they should probably have won again to 6 in that second game. That first game they couldn't know that their hand was so weak against us, but I think in their second game they probably should have won again faster. They probably should have won again harder. Anyway, so we win the game and we're pretty happy about it. So on to... Alright, so we are in match 2 against Lord Beerus. This is somebody that I know, I guess I shouldn't say personally, but I know pretty well, and that I am 100% sure that they are on Dredge. Beerus just plays Dredge in so many events, and he actually has had some decent success with it. I guess I should say some great success with the deck. So I know that they're on Dredge. And therefore, I'm priced into keeping some more busted hands. Perhaps priced into keeping some hands that are a little stronger against Cabal Therapy, maybe against Force of Will. These are all things I need to consider. We are on the play, I believe. Right. So here, we have access to Sensitive Mining Top, which is not amazing in this matchup, but pretty decent. We have access to Brainstorm to maybe get us some better cards. Then we have Yama's Will if we ever need to. That's going to get us a lot of mileage. So our hand is pretty good. We cast Mox Ruby. We cast Top. We go for Turian Academy. And essentially our plan is just to brainstorm, and if it ever gets countered, which, would be kind of surprising, but it was kind of a possibility with them having a Mental Misstep, because Dredge does play one, I believe. We still got to use Sensitive Mining Top. And theoretically, Sensitive Mining Top plus Brainstorm does allow us to see another card. So they have a Hollow One draw. They are still very likely to have Force of Will, so we need to keep that in mind. Right. So we cast Brainstorm. We see Tinker, which is amazing. We see Cabal Ritual. We put both those on top. I believe that we put... I'm not sure what I did, actually. Well, we'll get to see it. We go to see another card, because why not? We get Lion's Eye Diamond, which is obviously really good with Yawgmoth's Will, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We have access to Tinker and Yawgmoth's Will to be able to cast it, but we do keep Lion's Eye Diamond on top. So, obviously, getting Tinker was, the absolute best case scenario. Here we cast LED. We cast Mana Crypt. That just gets us more storm count. The only reason that this might have been weak is if they played some Mindbreak class in the main board. That actually was kind of sketchy, and I don't think I needed to cast that LED. But anyway, I go for a Tinker. our opponent is going to counter it, and we're just going to Yagmatsuo. So this hand was kind of insane, and again, it's mostly the tinker that we got to find. But again, I'm not like too ever sad to keep a hand that doesn't have a win con, doesn't have an extremely powerful spell. I guess Yagmatsuo is pretty powerful, but like doesn't have like a straight up like draw or kill. But that also has Sensei's Divining Top and or Brainstorm. Like that's fine with me. I'll keep that hand any day. So we Yogwill and we Lion's Eye Diamond. And then we're able to cast Lion's Eye Diamond again. We cast Mox Crypt and we go for Tinker again. And again, the chances that we whiff here are so low, and we just get Tendrils of Agony and we win the game. Our opponent had a pretty good hand. Again, it was just the fact that we had a way to protect Tinker. Not exactly protect, but a way to rebuy it. So therefore, it didn't really matter if they had interaction. The chances that your dredge opponent has 2 forces are extremely low. Not just 2 forces, but also 2 blue cards pitched to it. So I felt pretty good about that situation. And I don't think we had any other game plan in that game. And finally, last thing that would lead us to make the decision is that they had Hollow One. So our life total definitely mattered. So I was pretty priced into going for it. That being said, since we had top, there could have been an argument that we could have win another turn, because like with top, it's almost impossible to whiff with Bow Citadel. It's like even with like less life than we had at the moment, I think it's so unlikely we just whiff. So like we probably could have taken a hit. That being said, I'm not sure I really want to take that chance, especially with them having the chance to find a Cabal Therapy. So let's go to game 2. Oops, sorry. Right. All right. So round of draw. Our sideboarding was. I don't think Defense Grid is good enough in this matchup because while they run Mindbreak Traps and Force of Wills, they also run Unmasked, and I think those are much more consequential. And I do think that our main deck is really good enough against them. So we sideboarded in 2 Lavinias and 3 Ixalan Jailers. I think I remember, or at least I hope I was very much on the fence on whether to bring in Colossus. I think Colossus is really good against Reg. That being said, I think we were just kind of short on like things to cut in the main board. Anyway, so we cut 2 defense grids. We add in 2 Lavinias for those, and then we cut a Horkel's Recall because again, it's useless against them. Like yes, it brings back their Hollow Ones to hand, but that's really not something you care about. We sideboarded out Mental Misstep because it doesn't do enough against them. Sideboard down Cabal Ritual as well. To sideboard in 3 Elixir Jailers. Right. So here we have a hand with Lavinia and a way to cast it on turn 1. So again, it's one of those things where it's impossible not to keep this hand. It's too good. And we still have access to Dark Petition for like a Tinker. It's really not that big of a deal. This hand is super fine with me. I'd even say it's great, honestly. Right, so our opponent gets Bazaar. They did exile 14 cards, and we got to see that they had 3 Cabal Therapies exiled with that, which obviously helps us a lot. 2 Hollow Ones, they have less insane turn 1s most likely. And they exiled 2 blue cards, and which is always something we're happy to see. And they also had 2 Bridges from Below out of the deck. So overall, we're really happy about this position. They had an Unmask, which, we're never really happy to see that, but there's not much more you can do about it. So they take Lavinia, and again, this is why I think. I don't think this is necessarily something that confirms it, but I do think that Defense Grid is not really good enough against Reg just because of Unmask. I think Lavinia is just better in that slot. So we still get to cast Soul Ring, and I think so we get to cast Soul Ring and Dark Ritual. But unfortunately, your opponent has interaction for the Soul Ring. What's nice about our situation right now is that they have very little odds to be able to find basically they're not going to be able to have a Force of Will up, and they have very little chance of being able to find a Cabal Therapy since they have 3 exiled already. So we're really happy with this position, because what that means is that next turn we're going to be able to go for. We're going to be able to go for Dark Petition and get a lot of mileage with that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get Tinker, but again, that's not really like that big of an issue. So our opponent has a pretty hefty board already at the end of this turn, but it's not like that big of a problem. We can afford to take 4 life. The rest is a really, really nice top deck. Just because it allows us to get Spell Mastery for Dark Petition, which is going to make most of our draws much better this turn. So what's kind of annoying at this spot, basically, is that we're not going to be... Again, just to be clear, the rest, I was completely aware was not going to help us protect our combo. I knew it was just going to be a way of, you know, having Spell Mastery, and I think that's fine. So here what I believe we should go for is just Dark Petition, because we are kind of being pressured. I think that, I think getting Necro was definitely A-line. I think you could definitely argue that going for Tinker was not that bad. That being said, I think that our opponent is going to be able, especially with 24 cards remaining in the deck, I think the chances are very much... it's very much likely enough that our opponent's able to find out as Cabal Therapy. While it's not guaranteed they're going to be directing it, they're going to be naming Tinker specifically, I think the chances are high enough that I don't think it's worth it to take that plan. And I think that with them only having 4 damage on the board, we have a very high odds to be able to find the combo or find something close enough to the combo with Necro. So here we go for 7. I think that I'm someone who, during that tournament especially, I was a lot more conservative with Necro than I should have been. So I think that going for 8 there was probably the better play. So here we're going to be taking 4, and we're going to be able to go for Tinker next turn. So we're super happy with this spot. I believe, that's what happened. So basically our opponent wasn't able to find the Cabal Therapy in time. We do get hit for 7, so we're kind of hard pressed in terms of how we're going to be able to combo. That being said, we have Dark Ritual to help us a lot in that regard, and we have Tyrannic Academy as well. What I mean in that regard is that we're going to be able to get mana, so we should be able to do something with the setup. I don't know that there's specifically a perfect way to play this. I just played it how I could. So our opponent here, so Derek got sacrificed and they got a zombie. So we know we're not gonna get an next turn. We're at 4, which is rough. But I think our odds are very, very much high to be able to win this. One line that's really interesting is that since we haven't used our Yamaxwell yet, we're actually able to just cast Tendrils to gain more life for Ballista Citadel to be better, which is an interesting line. So here we go through Tyrannic Academy, we tap our 2 lands, we go for blue, then we go for Tinker. It's just better to do it now. It's pretty free. We get Ballista Citadel. I do think that there's an argument to maybe not play the Tyrannic Academy yet. It doesn't really help us that much, and there's a chance we won't get there. That being said, we top deck the Sensei Divining Top, so we know we're going to be winning the game. Right. Then we just cast top again. Then we Brainstorm, and what's really nice here is we get to chain, bring back artifacts to our hand, cast them again, and then just Tendrils with the mana from Dark Ritual. So here, just a free win. We return Moxel Pole, we return Mana Volt, we return top, I think. I'm not sure if we even return that. Yeah. Then we just cast him again, especially because right. So here, so we just cast Mana Volt, we cast Sensei Divining Top, we cast Mox Burrow, then we just Brainstorm because it doesn't really matter. And we Tendrils, and that's a win. Obviously, there is a non-zero chance our opponent has been able to find a Mindbreak Chapter, I suppose, but personally I felt like the odds were low enough of that happening, especially since I wasn't seeing any in the graveyard. I figured that meant that they only had Force Negations in the board and not Mindbreak Traps. Maybe that's a wrong assumption, but I felt pretty confident here. I didn't really feel like there was much chance I was going to lose. And even if I did, like our Senses Divine Top was going to be able to get us like a lot of looks, and we had Perioding as well. Like I felt like it was likely enough that we were going to be able to find Yamatswell even then. Honestly, I don't even think I thought about it, but I just felt that it was safe enough to just go for the win. It was the only line that we had anyway. We're not going to wait. So yeah, so that's a win. So on to... Alright, so in this round, we are against Cherry X-Man, which is somebody that I know well, but I've had the chance to speak with a fair amount on the Yama Killer channel. Yama Killer is a great streamer. I encourage people to go watch his stuff. And I know that they're on Rug Oko. So essentially what they do is they run Oko just has an insane value card, and I guess has a win con as well. Obviously not a win con that gets a lot of advantage from PO, but that doesn't really matter. And I think they run 1 mana Gojira, or at least I think they ran in this tournament 1 mana Gojira Hydra and 3 in the sideboard, just as kind of a transformative plan. And I think that's really, really smart of them. This version we see is a little bit more mid-range. It gets access to like a lot more like Power Blast type effects, and it's kind of slower, but again, PO is so consistent at getting its combo that I think being a slower deck is really not a disadvantage. Cherry X-Man's the only person I know that is on this plan, but I don't think that makes it a bad plan. I think it's pretty good. We have a fine hand. Obviously, we'd rather have like the rest to be able to kind of damage your combo, but we'll never mulligan this hand. It's just very, very good. What's nice is we get to deploy our hand pretty well on turn 1. What's annoying is that they get to know that we don't have any interaction. Anyway, we Mox Sapphire, we Brainstorm, knowing that we're going to go for Polluted Delta. Unfortunately, the Mental Misstep, obviously they had to look at our hand, so they knew how good that was against us. So we just have to play Manifold, and we're not in the greatest spot. I did want to get back onto the topic of Dredge, because I think Dredge is a fine matchup. I think it's maybe even favored for us, but it's one of those decks where it's like, honestly, almost the entire game is decided in their mulligan. Like what you're able to do is not going to make a big difference. Here we go for something that feels really bad, which is Duress, then Twister. I believe that's what we went for. I'm not sure. We didn't do anything. I think. Yeah. Now I think about it, I don't feel great about this line. I think it was pretty weak. But I guess I was just really, really afraid that I was not going to be able to resolve my Time Twister. Basically, the idea is that like I did not want to have to tap my Manifold because I felt like I was going to be pretty far behind in that spot. Now that I think about it, I think that was pretty misguided. Like I don't think that was very smart. So yeah, if you're in my position, if I was ever in my position again, I would probably go for the rest in Time Twister. I think it's good enough. So they have Oko, which obviously we're not happy to see. I don't think anybody's happy to see Oko on the other side of the board in almost any matchup. So here we know we kind of want to catch some action. We catch Tendrils, which is not action. That feels really bad. So we go for the rest. We see that they have 2 Forcibles and a Snapcaster, so we had no chance of winning this game anyway. I believe that we pack it up, or maybe we try to spin our wheels a little bit. But I believe we eventually like pack it up pretty soon. We didn't have a choice to cast Time Twister. It was never going to get better than that. So they have an Oko on an empty board, and we have nothing except for a lot of mana. So here, I think there's really much we could have done in this game. We kept a fine hand. I don't think a mulligan was going to be a lot better than that most of the time. And they had a very, very good hand with like Probe, Mental Misstep, an actual threat in Oko, and 2 Forcible in the Snapcaster Mage. That's a lot for us to deal with. Here we top deck Tinker because I guess we're really good at the game. And we sacrifice our Vault. We get a Bolus Citadel. We play the Strand from the top of the deck. We Ritual. we Flood a Strand. Then we get, I think, Watery Grave, we Ritual, Mox Emerald, and then we have another land on top, which feels really bad. Here, thinking back to that game, I think we made a very, very bad decision, which was that we did not cast General's Agony. So here's my reasoning. Basically, in that game, I was very, very upset, obviously, that I didn't caught it. I was obviously upset to see my opponent's hand with like Force of Wills and Mental Missteps, and it just felt like I had no chance. I top deck Tinker, which made me very happy. Then our combo just petered out. We managed to catch 2 fetches in a row, which was obviously a huge bummer. And then I just didn't cast my tendrils, thinking, oh, whatever, I'm just gonna combo during my turn. It's gonna be fine. Obviously, very, very dumb reasoning. Going for tendrils here would have gained us. Gained us how much? It would have gained us 10 life. We've gone to 23. That means our opponent would have had a 4-turn clock or something like that. And knowing that, obviously, and they would have been at 4, and that means that any single spell that would have been able to get us to a Yawgmoth's Will, if we had Yawgmoth's Will and tendrils, we would have won. Obviously, that map changes a little bit because of Oko. Oh, wow. So, funny enough, I actually did that play. I just misremembered. I guess in a league match I did that. Never mind. Sorry about that. So I do go for tendrils because I don't think I can ever keep it. Totally. Now I think about it, I think I made the right decision in that spot. Obviously, we're in an awful position. Like, they're just going to make our Citadel into a 3-3, and we just get to be really sad. They go down to 3. So they have an Oko on board and 2 cards in hand, so we're not really happy about our position. They get Puyo, which is like, Jesus, what a great top deck. That being said, we got a good top deck in our Tinker, so we can't really be that mad about it. Yeah. So we have to draw that Delta. Obviously, feel pretty bad about that. We attack, because I think that reducing their clock is good enough. I think they're never going to attack with our Citadel on board anyway, so I think it's the right play. Now that I think about it, I think casting that Shogun was fine. No, I think casting that Delta was probably a better idea, just to be able to hide the fact that we had a white splash. I think that's maybe just like worth. Yeah. So they cast Oko? No, they cast Dig, which, obviously makes us feel very sad, because that means that they are in a very, very good position. Almost always going to have a counter. We get Dark Petition. Very happy to see that. We go for Dark Petition with the hopes of getting Yawgwill. And I believe our opponent has a Force of Will here. That's what I assume is going to happen. I'm not sure what they have here. I don't remember that well. So they tap to. And here I think casting their Petition is always going to be the right play. I don't think that giving them more draws to any outcome to find Force of Will or just to find Force of Will naturally is really a good idea. And we win, which obviously we're very happy about. Right, so let's go on to game 2. Alright, so we're very happy. We're like 1-0 against PO, which is obviously a great feeling. So this hand is a mess. So essentially, in theory, what we can do is go for Black Lotus, Mox Jet, go for Dark Ritual, with the Dark Ritual, cast Sacrament. Then we get to recall Purity. That's the base theory of our hand, which is very good. That being said, we are on the draw. So I can't say that that's a... Wait, we're on the... Huh? Okay. I have to assume what's happening here is that we actually lost game 1, but the replay bugged out. I guess. I guess that's, yeah. So we lost game 1, which I assume is because they had a forcible. I think that's what happened. Yeah, I think the game 1 replay bugged out. So let's go for memory. I think we get forced and we just concede because with them having an OCO, we're just not going to be able to recoup that sort of advantage. Theoretically, we can draw another Dark Petition. Maybe that gets us there. I just didn't feel like we had a chance. I think it was a preemptive scoop. I'll be honest about that. But again, we lost that game. So we're on to play this game. And with this draw, I think we don't have a choice to keep it. Let's go for Moxjet. We go for Recall first. Then we go for Preordain. We go for Lavinia, which we're really happy to see. What's annoying, obviously, with this setup is that we kind of have to keep the fetch and we can't actually use it. But, you know, don't feel really terrible about that. And then we get to... Oh, man. Right. Yeah, so basically we go for the rest. Because in this spot, essentially, against almost any PO opponent, I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to get to go Sacrament, and they have no way of winning the game because PO only ever runs like 2 to 3 win cons. And basically my reasoning in this spot is that, like, well, yes, Lavinia is really, really good. I'd rather be sure that Sacrament resolves. I think maybe this is a little misguided. I think it was a very, very close spot. The reason that tipped me over the edge is that, yeah, I didn't have essentially the idea was that even if I got to Lavinia, I was not really gonna have the mana to cast it. So even if it was really good in the matchup, it wasn't really worth it to, like, just throw away this turn if they had a force, and then have to wait another turn before I even get there. Like, obviously Brainstorm can find us the last land, but like that's kind of a little optimistic. So I do decide to go for the rest. I see that they don't have any interaction, which I think is pretty greedy. But I believe that they mold, right? Yeah. We take away the Merchant Scroll. Time Twister would have been a pretty bad card to take away. They would have just... I think it was really close between Time Twister and Merchant Scroll. But I decided to go for Merchant Scroll because it could have let them find a Forcible, I guess. At that point, I didn't really think it mattered that much, but I do think that Scroll was the right choice. Especially because next turn they were going to be able to cast it on turn 1. And with this current hand, they weren't going to be able to cast anything on turn 1 in either case. So I went for Cabal Ritual, then I cast Set of 6 Sacrament. Now what happened is, whoops. Oh man. Alright, I'm gonna do something kind of annoying. I'm going to restart this replay. Sorry about that. Really, really sorry about that. Just because I want you guys to be able to see the main deck, because I think that's important. Or the 60. Sorry. Right. Yep, I don't know why chat is open. Sorry about that. So strange. Yeah, my bad. I don't know why it skipped that. Right. So then we go for Sadistic Sacrament. We're like feeling over the moon. Right. And then we see a very, very sad thing that we now are aware that we are not going to win this game, or at least Sadistic Sacrament is very, very bad in this matchup. So again, in normal PO decks, people only run 2 to 3 win cons. The issue is that Cherry is on a kind of mid-rangey build, and they even have some kind of like secondary sideboard plan, which means that they have a ton of win cons. I don't think that this is necessarily a hedge against the sacrament, which obviously would be insane. I think it's more so that it's just very, very easy for PO to run a ton of miscellaneous stuff that just kind of helps you get a lot of mileage in a lot of like slower games. So they have like that Fate Ends, they have Hydras, they have... Basically, our sacrament is never going to be able to stop them from winning the game. So we are pretty bummed out. Because obviously we placed a lot of our hopes on the sacrament. That being said, so I take Karn because I think that's something that locks us out. I take top and like recall. Don't really know why I took top. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, I don't think a lot of things made a lot of sense. I guess now that I think about it, maybe taking out a Noko is probably a better thing because that was like something that could damage my Ballistic Citadel plan. Maybe that's the other thing. I don't really know. At that point, I didn't really think the third card mattered. Now that I think about it, Oko is probably the right pick. But again, don't think it really matters. So obviously you're not in a great position. That being said, we still get to cast Manifold. And then we go for Dark Petition, and I think we go for Necro. That's really the only option I think makes sense in the spot. Oh no, we almost fell. Yeah. Yikes. See, this is why old me is sometimes better than new me. So I go for Yawgmoth's Will, because obviously that's gonna let us cast like Lotus, let's cast Ancestral Recall, we can play the land from our graveyard. We can probably win this turn, honestly, if we get to Lotus. Again, pretty unfortunate stuff. They fetched, then they brainstormed, and they were able to find the one card that helped them a lot in the spot, which is Force of Will. So they exiled their Time Twister. Obviously, we are very bummed out about this, but we can't do much about it, so hey. That being said, like, their hand is just one PO and one unknown card and one land. So it could be a lot worse. So here we just go for Brainstorm. And then we put Ponder and Mox Sapphire on top. I think the reasoning for that was that I didn't really need either card, and that keeping two tutors was the better plan because it allowed us to fight through Force of Will better. And here, when you know it, they had another Force of Will with their Paradisical Outcome, which is really, really good. But thankfully, like, the fact that they're just extremely unlikely to be able to recoup their disadvantage in this game. We just go for we just get Mox Sapphire, and then we just go for Tutor, and they have like very low chances of being able to fight that. Now that I think about it, I think going for Tutor there was probably bad. I think we should have gone for it at the end step. But live in urine, I guess. So we go for Tinker, and we cast Tinker because that's the only thing we can do. And then I have another interaction because Jesus, holy mother of God, if they had an interaction piece, I would be very, very sad. And then we just go for the win. Like, the chances that we whiff here are pretty like, are very, very slow, are very, very low. That being said, we managed to whiff and we get Mental Misstep, which is, like, again, pretty sad. But, you know, what are you going to do? So we still get a Lavinia, which helps a lot. And we have Mental Misstep for the Ponder on top. So, you know, this could have been a worse whiff, but it does feel kind of bad. We still get to actually go off this turn. And I guess, we go for Tendrils, Time Walk, and now we know we're going to win anyway. Yeah, that bugged out a little bit, but anyway, we won the game. Yeah, sorry, 2 replays are kind of buggy, to the surprise of no one. So we go into game 3. We're not feeling like amazing again. I do think I messed up by scooping game 1. I'm still like a little upset about that, but it's not the end of the world. I don't know if we would have been able to win that. I really don't know. So here, we're on the draw, which, while it doesn't feel great, it does mean never feels great, but it does mean that we have more chances to find a second hand, because this hand is actually quite good. Chain of Vapor is by far the weakest card in the hand, but it's never really useless, I would say. And we have a Tutor to be able to find Tinker when we get there. We have Get Prep to be able to know what we're fighting against. We have the Rest to be able to actually remove what we're fighting against, and we have a Lavinia, which is going to do insane work in this matchup. Cabal Ritual, also not very useful in this spot, but in almost every draw, rituals are their most innocuous pieces. So we keep this because I think it's a very good hand. And then our opponent Git Probes, which feels really, really bad, but there's not much we can do about it. They had a very, very good start in Turn Academy, Mox Ruby with a Ponder to get card advantage, especially with them having information for the Git Probe. Duress is it's not where we really want to draw. We want to find the land, but it does mean that we get to interact with our opponent a little bit more, which is good. And we see something that is very scary, which is a hand that just does not care about the combo. They have 2 interaction pieces. Flusher Storm is very good. Force of Will is very good. Flusher Storm is going to be a little bit harder for them to deploy, so we take Force of Will, obviously. But their hand is very good. Mana Culture Hydra is going to be lights out if we're not able to combo in the next 2 or 3 turns. Oko is gonna mess up our Lavinia. We're just not in a good spot right now. And the issue is that our opponent's gonna be able to actually cast Mana Culture Hydra or Oko next turn. Sorry. So what we end up doing is is taking Oko. Obviously drawing Necro in this spot feels awful as well. There's not much we can do about it. So I think we take Oko. And the reasoning for that is that our Lavinia would get removed if we don't take Oko. Wow, I have really bad memory. Sorry. We take Force of Will. Yeah, sorry. Because if we don't, our Lavinia's not going to be able to resolve. And if you don't find land, I guess we'd rather take Force just because it's the better card in our hand, I suppose. Again, in 2 draws, we're able to find the second land, which feels kind of bad, and then we draw a Dark Petition, which is not even remotely close to a land. Go for the rest, because it's the only thing we have. I don't really know why they didn't cast it. I guess they were kind of worried about us having... Yeah, so they didn't cast their Oko, which feels really good for us, but again, we feel really bad, because even if we do find our land, we're still really, really far from winning the game. Anyway, so the rest, they don't Flush or Storm it. And we take Oko. Again, with the reasoning that otherwise Lavinia is not going to be able to resolve, and that are not going to be able to do a lot of work. And a big issue is that Snapcaster Mage would be able to just Flusher Storm if we put their Flusher Storm in the grave. Now I think about it, since they want 2 lands, it might have made sense to go for taking... No, not really. And then we draw our Close Recall, and we know we've lost a game. There's no way we're going to win. Our opponent proceeds to, draw pretty much anything. Again, like I said, it's just... There's absolutely no way we're winning this game from this spot. Their Hydra pressures us a lot. Hydra's a really, really, really good Magic card. Pressures us pretty heavily, and we just kind of draw dead. Again, Mox Ruby, which is not what we want. We go Demonic Tutor, they counter it, and they're going to be able to snap counter. So we're just in a terrible spot. I think there's an argument that we should have taken Flusher Storm there if we ever wanted to have a chance to win the game. That being said, I don't think there ever was a chance we were going to win the game, especially since we were going to be so low. So our Ballistic Citadel pen was never really going to work out. And then we know there's no way we're winning this game. It's just over. And yeah, so that feels pretty bad, but hey, 2-1's not the worst record. And we just go on to round 3. Hi, sorry, I said round 3, but I actually meant round 4. Sorry about that. So, to go back on the topic of PO, PO is, I think, one of our most difficult matchups in the format, and I think that a version like theirs that is able to just have this sort of mid-range plan, which I do think does make your PO kill a lot less consistent. Not that that really makes a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. I think that's an even worse matchup, because that means that cards like Lavinia, cards like Defense Grid, are much less powerful. Plus Storm as well. Which is why, like, if that ever was a version that was much more popular, I think that we should probably go back to the Pyroblast Band, because that's more versatile against things like Oko. But anyway, yeah, we just got beat down. I still think that we shouldn't have scooped game 1, but that's my mistake. Here against Zurio. Never played against him before. We have a okay like starting hand, but it's not that powerful. And then we have this hand. This hand is actually pretty good, surprisingly enough. We have access to Defense Grid if they're a controlling matchup. We have Mental Misstep, some mileage. We have Dark Ritual for Necro, and we have Yogg-Will to kind of help us get there. But at the end of the day, Yogg-Will is like kind of the worst card in this hand, I think. Even though it's a really, really good magic card. And yeah, so I take it out. And our opponent plays a Nurancy, which could represent almost like a lot of decks in the format. We draw a land, which we're pretty happy about. Obviously, it makes us feel a little bit less happy about bottoming that Yogg-Will, but I'm not really upset about it. What's really nice about this is that our Defense Grid, drawing that land means that we can play Defense Grid and Dark Ritual and Necro on the first turn, which is very, very good. And we even have Mental Misstep for that Spell Pierce, so we're just in a really, really good position. And again, I think I go for 7, and I probably should have gone for 8. And then our hand is just fantastic. Like, we get to, so we don't actually, yeah, so it's not, I think we get to combo off next turn, I'm pretty sure. Or no, I don't think we do actually. I'm not sure, I don't remember. So here we go for Dark. Oh yeah, Cabal Ritual. Yeah, that's what we do. So we actually go for the Yogg-Will line, funnily enough. I actually think that's pretty... No, it wasn't. So we get Yamato. Yeah. And then we, Yamato with Dark Ritual. And then our opponent knows that we can just either go for Tendrils, which would work, or we're gonna get a lot of stuff going, and they know that we have a Defender on the board, we have a Necro to recoup if this doesn't even work out, and then they have very little going on, so they just scoop. I think, again, with this setup, there were very, very high chances that we were able to win. It wasn't 100%, but it was very, very high. So we would have gone Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, gone for Dark Petition, I believe, and then I actually think we didn't have to win that turn, but I wanted to like at least get a Vampiric Tutor out. So funnily enough, our opponent wasn't dead, but they scooped anyway. So let's go to game 2. We didn't, unfortunately, if we can even say unfortunately, we didn't get really any info about our opponent's deck, which matters, but like we can kind of assume that they're a controlling deck. So sideboarding, so I put in the 2 Lavinias because again I felt like there was a control matchup. 2 Flusher Storms. I took out a Defense Grid, and I think that might have been wrong. I took out 1 Defense Grid, took out 1 LED, took out 1 Cabal Ritual, a Twister, and a Recall. I think Twister was like kind of bad to side out, and I think that siding out 1 of those Defense Grids is probably bad, now that I think about it. And a Recall, sorry. Right, so opponent with a very, very powerful turn 1. Oh, sorry, didn't even talk about my opener. So I felt like our opponent was like totally fine. It's not like the most powerful thing, but it's a very, very like my idea basically is that Necro, we have pretty decent outs of drawing our third back land, our third back source, and Vampire Tutor gives us like very, very decent outs to be able to find Tinker, and with the acceleration for Mubi and a duress, I think we have decent enough chances to be able to interact with our opponent, or at least protect our combos. What I'm trying to say, and mental misstep if that ever comes up, is decent. So we go for Underground Sea. We preordain because that's a really good card, really good top deck. Because obviously, like, we're not really happy with duressing turn 1. Vampire Tutor is not very good turn 1 either. Because we know we're playing against a control deck or some sort, or like a PO deck. So we're able to find Lavinia and our third land. And I think, yeah, we want both of those. We draw the land just because if her opponent, I guess, has a Thoughtseize, that's just better. I guess it's weaker against a Surgical, but I don't think it's very likely that our opponent's Surgical is a Delta or a Bearding, so. Our opponent, if I remember correctly, in this game is going to get a lot, and I mean a lot of mileage from that top. They ship mine, which feels really, really bad, but it also makes us feel pretty happy that we kept that land, but it also means lastly, it also means that we're not going to cast our Lavinia next turn, which feels pretty bad. Here now I think about it, I think we probably should have misstepped that top. I guess I was in the mindset of like the last game when they pierced us, but I think that's probably wrong. I think I should have counted that top, and now that I remember this game, I think we actually lose because of this top. So I think that was a misplay. Here we have Lavinia. We're gonna be able to cast it next turn, but that's a fair time away. And our opponent, with the amount of mana they have right now, they don't even need really to bypass Lavinia. Actually, no, they do. Sorry. But still, our opponent's in a really good spot. That being said, we top deck a top, which means that we get to use that red mana from Marsha Bead that was so like clunky in our draw, which feels pretty good. And it means that we also get to play Lavinia at the same time. So, you know, honestly, could be a lot worse. Our opponent, unfortunately, top deck mana drain. Top deck is not really fair, though. They got to find it pretty reliably with top. So now we know that our opponent is some sort of Esper control deck. Although I believe they're running a Red Splash for Dak Faden. And maybe some number of Power Blast, I'm not sure. And, you know, now they have 2 generic mana from that. Lavinia, and they cast Jace. No, they cast Narset. Sorry. And then they find Yawgmoth's, which is kind of strange to me. Like, I was just very surprised. Yawgmoth's seemed like not that great in an interactive deck like Esper Control. But hey, to each your own. They have 2 cards on top. One of them is Time Walk, which feels horrendous. Again, I think this is just really reinforcing the idea that we definitely should have mental misstepped their top. I think that was very bad on my part not to. Now we get the misstep, which feels decent, but like again, we're so far in the game and we have like really, really not much going on, and they get to will and recall. I don't think we pack it up now, but I think we end up packing it up later on. Now thankfully you find Tinker, which means that we have like decent odds to getting this going. And then we're able to Vampire Tutor for a Lotus, I believe. Then I remember, I forgot about this. So, huge misplay on my part. I forgot about the Narset static effect, which I think is, I don't think I'm the first person to do that, and I don't think it's the first person it's happened. It's the first time it's happened to me. But essentially the idea was that we were gonna be able to use top to draw our Tinker, and then use Tutor to get a Lotus so that we'd be able to cast a Tinker, because that was all in our upkeep. Issue is, since we'd drawn a card with top, we were not going to draw a card for the turn because of Narset. So we kind of got set back really hard from that. That being said, I don't really think we had much of a chance to even get there if we didn't make that misplay. But still, it was a pretty big misplay. And then our opponent cast Jace, and I think we just scooped then. I think they probably put the Lotus on bottom. Yeah. Then we tinker. They have the top. We're actually able to get Bolus's Citadel. We play fetch from the top. We Cabal Ritual. We Dark Petition. Oh, sorry, I gotta remove that sideboard. Then we chain, returning the Mana Vault. Dark Ritual. Soul Ring. Mana Vault. And then we, the rest, I think? I don't know what we did. Oh, no, we go for Dark Petition to, I don't even know where we made this play. Oh, right, because we wanted to have, yeah, right. So my idea here was that, what was the reasoning? Was that it was, with the duress, we only had, I think, a storm count of 10, which meant if they actually had a force, they could counter one of them. Or sorry, like, yeah, I actually don't know why I made this. Oh, no, yeah, if they were able to find a force with the top, and then they forced us, they were able to counter one of the copies, and then they would just fight. So my idea was just to start Petition, and then it's free because we get to defense grid, and then we get to tendrils, and there's no way they can do anything about that. And then we tendrils, and I think I remember me telling my opponent that their deck was really cool. Esper Control was pretty cool. The Volcanic Island, I don't really know what that was for because I never got to see more of the deck, but yeah, that's it. On to round. All right, so here we are. Right, so we are 3-1 in the tournament. We are in the 5th round, and we're playing against Ramp. I had never played against Ramp up until that point. Then, yeah, I think I looked up their name, but I couldn't find much information about them. I'd seen them in other formats, but not on Vintage, so I figured that there were some pretty decent chances that our opponent was on a controlling deck, so I felt like having this type of hand was totally fine. Preordain allowed us to find a black source to be able to cast opponent's next turn, and we had access to a turn 1 defense grid, which I think is very good against controlling decks, or at least even like PO, it's pretty good against. Even against Dredge, it's pretty good against. So I thought this hand was fine. We went for Mana Crypt, defense grid, we go for Preordain. We find Tendrils and Mox Ruby. We don't want either of those. We find a Duress. Feels really bad because we haven't really been able to find a back source. And then we find that we're against Chops, which is first and foremost a very, very bad matchup overall. It's just really, really, really rough for us. Defense grid is absolutely useless against them when we have 2 of them. Also, to make it even worse, we don't have a black source for 3 black cards in hand. We're in a terrible position in this game. Against a controlling deck, that'd be fine, but against this specific matchup, it feels horrendous. They have a Chalice draw, which feels really, really bad, and I believe that they have a Listen Golem, which is even more insane, so I think it's pretty safe to say that we're already dead in the game from this turn on. Fortunately, we draw a Swamp, which feels alright. And then we cast Cabal Ritual to cast Necro. Go for Necro. I mean, while we're able to like get a lot of advantage with Necro, our opponent still has Listen Golem. We get 8 cards. We discard the defense grid. Yeah, overall it feels pretty bad. Our opponent plays Free Action Revoker. They name Mana Crypt, which feels really bad. They hit us for 5, so our hand does pretty much nothing. Because the issue is that in our current spot, we need 3 black mana to be able to even cast Bolus's Citadel, let alone like actually win with it. We're not going to be able to cast any 0 mana spells. Our Mana Crypt is down. We're in a pretty rough position. Our tutor is going to cost 1 more mana. Our opponent is going to deal 7 life to us, so that means that even... Well, yeah, it's basically even if we're able to get ballistas to don't play with like Tinker, the chances that we actually win are super slim. With our opponent having Lotson Golem on the board, Friction Revoker, Naming, or Mana Crypt, and a Chalice on the board, the chances that we're actually even able to do a natural Storm Kill are super slow, super low. So, gotta say, I feel pretty bad about this position. Then our opponent cast Ballista, which means that we're dead next turn, so we know there's no way we're gonna win. And I think we lose this flip. Oh no, we won it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We know there's no way we win this game, so we just scoop it up. Essentially, they only play. Yeah, no, there's no way we were gonna win this game. So, yeah, bummer. Playing against shops. It's always really rough to play against shops in general. We kept a really, really, really bad hand against shops. So, on the draw, mind you. No, on the play. Sorry, on the play. Still felt awful. So, yeah. So then we move on to game 2. And our opponent, oh, sorry, how do we sideboard? We sided in the 3 recalls, obviously. And did we have a chain? I think we sideboarded in 2 fiddle pushes. Yeah, I think fiddle push is fine in the matchup. I don't think it's very good, which is why I only have 1 in the board nowadays. But I think it's fine. We sideboarded out the 2 defense grids, and a Lion's Eye Diamond, and finally a Time Twister. Time Twister might be again a little greedy. Like I've said, I think I was a little too greedy with my Time Twister sideboarding. But I think I felt like the matchup was very rarely going to go to a spot where I wanted Time Twister, so I didn't feel it was that good. I think Lion's Eye Diamond was maybe a little greedy because we do kind of want fast kills. But my idea, I don't even know why I sideboarded it out. I think that was wrong. And I sideboarded out Mental Misstep because I didn't do anything against them, and I sideboarded out Cabal Ritual because I felt like it was worth it to go a little lower on mana production to find, just have a better main deck, I guess. Removing Cabal Ritual, removing LED, I feel kind of weird about. I'm not sure if that was right. Anyway, we have a starting hand that is going to cast Dark Ritual on turn 1. So I can't really complain. We even get back Mox Sapphire to Preordained. So overall, feeling really good about the spot. Our opponent keeps us 7. We cast Sapphire. We cast Preordained just because if we find a fetch, I don't want to do things differently. I think we put Virtual on top. Oh, sorry. We look at their hand and it's Ancient Tomb. Right. So we put Cabal Ritual on top because it's gonna give us 1 more mana, and I think wasting Cabal Ritual in that spot is not really worth it. So a Dark Ritual. So we went for Cabal Ritual instead. I think we bottomed the Dark Ritual. No, actually we topped the Dark Ritual. I think. So it's always a good hit to hit out of a Necro. So felt like it was worth it. And then we Cabal Ritual so that we were able to do rest on turn 1, and that helps a lot against their Sphere draws. We see their hand. And it's Ancient Tomb, Mox Sapphire, Foundry Inspector, Stonecoil Serpent, Foundry Inspector, Mystic Forge, and a Black Lotus. Don't get me wrong, this hand is very good, just like period. Like it's a very, very good aggressive hand that's gonna be able to get a ton of stuff out on turn 1. If that access to Black Lotus, they could have gone like Foundry Inspector, like Mox Sapphire. They could have gone for Mystic Forge as well. They probably even could have played a card on top. Like again. Very, very, no, actually, I don't think they could have cast, no, I think they could have cast Mystic Forge, but, again, it doesn't really do anything against this matchup, and I think that DPS is not really a matchup you can afford to not have anything against in your hand. Like, I feel like that's pretty greedy. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm, like, exaggerating, but personally, I felt like that was kind of greedy. I played a Mana Crypt. I'm not, like, 100% sure if that was the right play. My idea was that I don't think life was going to matter a lot in this game, and I think that getting all the cards possible from Necro is probably worth it. Here we got 7. Still think we should have gotten 8. We find Tinker, so we know like there's really not that much of a chance we lose this game. We hope that we don't lose the Mana Crypt flip because that would suck. We win it, and then we just go for Tinker, and I think it's pretty straightforward from here. Tinker, both Citadel, we Ritual. And I think our opponent concedes here. Maybe they don't. Yeah, so I DT'd, and yeah, I get Eternal Agony. There's no way we lose this game, and we just win. Yeah. Right. Just gonna take a break, so I need to take care of my cat, and I'll be right. Right. So we lose. We win this. We win this game. Sorry about this sideboard. I always forget to close it. Another thing that I forgot that I sideboarded in was a Blacksteel Colossus, because I think it is very, very good in this matchup. Right. So sorry, my cat's really craving attention. My bad. So I'm going to go into game 3. So obviously we're not feeling great. We're on the draw against Shops, which is really, really never a good place to be. We see this hand. This hand is not like the best possible hand, but it is very, very good. It still allows us to tinker early in the game, and that's something we always want to do, especially against this matchup. We have a Hercules Recall as well. That helps a lot. And we have a Mystical Tutor, also quite good. Just very, very exploit card. And we have a Yawgmoth Soul if like all our stuff gets like removed or countered or some stuff like that. Which not countered, but if our things go wrong, if that makes any sense. And our opponent goes Leyline on turn 1, which I didn't expect. And it's something I'll get back to when it happens again. But this is something that I found very surprising that tournament. In my research, Leyline was really not very much played. Was really not played at all in the sideboards of Shops in the past few weeks. And for this tournament, a few Shops pilots came with a couple of them in the sideboard. Obviously, directly like the only matchup that I think of that I can think of that is weak to Leyline is DPS specifically. So I feel like that was definitely a big meta call against DPS, and I was pretty surprised by that because like in my eyes the big meta call was going to be Bug and PO, but surprisingly enough, I guess it was DPS for a lot of people, and there were a lot of DPS players. Don't get me wrong, but I still felt I was still quite surprised to see that kind of hedge against DPS because I think it's pretty niche. Anyway, our opponent had Leyline. They went with Soul Ring and then a Sphere Resistance. So a really, really, really powerful turn 1. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Really good. Our opponent was our hand was not very good at dealing with this kind of stuff. We have nothing on turn 1, which doesn't feel great. Like one of the only possible ways to really beat Sphere, if you can really call beating it, is like just having a lot of like a lot of Moxen or like mana crypt, stuff like that, to be able to like deploy mana on your turn 1, and then that means that you have a lot more chances to deploy a lot of mana on turn 2. That being said, that's not really what our opponent allowed us to do. So here we just had to kind of play like one turn behind the whole game, which is not really something we're happy to see. Both Edgestone Recall and Call Ritual are not cards we really want in this game. They're not really going to help us. We need lands, we need mana, we need more. Like, we're not in a good spot. And we need an artifact too that we'll just hack to tinker. So here, our opponent's deploying Foundry Inspectors, which of course are not like the biggest clock, but they're decent. What's interesting in this game is that we don't really care about the damage we're going to take. We do, obviously, but we don't care as much because we're just really not on a Ballista Citadel pan. With the Leyline on board and the Sphere Resistance, it's just super, super clunky for us for that win. So we're really, really going for Tinker Blightsteel specifically. Fortunately enough, we draw Mox Jet, which is obviously a really good feeling. One thing that kind of sucks, obviously, is we're not actually going to be able to deploy Hercules Recall, which we're kind of bummed about, but there's not much you can do about it. We take 6. Obviously, we're at 9. We're not really in that good of a spot. But with the Hercules Recall that we have in hand right now, we are in a position where we're going to be able to Hercules on their turn, and then be able to deploy our takers on the next turn. Now that's all fine and dandy, but the issue is that our opponent draws Stonecold Serpent, and they, yeah, sorry, I have to talk about this actually now I think about it. So our opponent had like the 2 Foundry Inspectors, which were like fine, right? But they also top deck your Stonecold, which is really, really, really good. Like that, like I know that sounds like maybe a little salty, but I just want to make it clear. Like Stonecoil is quite possibly the best draw in your deck, aside from maybe Protection Revoker to like nullify or Mox Chip. Even that is like less good than Stonecoil Serpent in this specific spot. Like Stonecoil Serpent was like an insane draw, and it's more so that like there's so many other draws that are like really, really slow and maybe even like kind of poor in the spot, and that's why like kind of blew my mind our opponent top deck Serpent. So make it clear, like this is not going to be like a salt video or whatever where I get mad at my opponent's drawing well. It's fine. Like my opponents draw well every once in a while, but it was just like kind of very surprising to see it come in like that. I did not expect to see a Stonecoil Serpent. I think here we like cast Mystical Tutor, which I don't know why we would do that. Oh, we go for Time Walk. Right. So that was the okay. So that was the idea. Now that I think about it, I don't know why you went for that. No. Right. Okay. So, sorry. Just got through my thoughts. Sorry, I was a little frustrated there. Just remembering that game and how sad I was because I was up 3-1, and obviously like the dream was alive, and I was a little sad to see it go like that. But essentially, the issue with this hand is that sure, Hercules Recall is great because it gets our opponent Sphere of Resistance back into their hand. The issue with that is that they're just gonna be able to recast it because we're gonna we can't do it on their end of turn because they're gonna be attacking us with lethal damage on board, which means that we're gonna have to do it in combat, and that means they're just gonna be able to recast Sphere. Sure, theoretically, if our opponent top deck like another Stonecold Serpent, then yeah, it'd be fine because then we would just get to. Actually, not even that. No, it wouldn't even work. So that means we're never going to be able to cast Hercules Recall to win the game. And I just realized I've been talking about Hercules Recall and forgetting that they had Leyline, which was also the big thing that was really, really rough for DPS, is that Leyline is super, super good against us because our Hercules Recalls are also denied against shops. And that's why, that's what I meant by, DPS so specifically bad against Leyline in the shops matchup, because, again, your Hercules Recalls are just nullified. Which is why it was even more surprising, because again, against any other matchup, it's not even remotely good or decent. So that was what was such a feels bad, I guess, in that spot, which meant that a Hercules Recall was not an option. Now, what that means with our current situation was that we had to go for Tinker to get a Bite Steal, but the issue is on this board, our Bite Steal was not going to be very efficient. How should I say this? Yes, we get a Bite Steal out, but they still have 3 creatures on board. They have a very decent board, and we're not going to be able to attack with Bite Steal. So my idea was to get Mystical Tutor to get him Time Walks. That way we're actually able to kind of proceed. And I don't think there's really much we could get other than that, because if we got Chain of Vapor, for example, to return, I don't know, their Stonecold or something like that. They're just gonna return Bite Steal. So I don't think Chain was really an option. I don't think anything else an option. Maybe Push. That's something I probably should have considered, was going for the Push for the Stonecold Serpent, because that means that our Bite Steal would have been in a lot better of a spot. But even then, our opponent could have attacked us in a way that would have made it really bad. That would have made the Push really bad, I think. Let me think about it. So the idea, so we forgot on a Push. We go for Blight Steal. Our opponent attacks us with all, for example. Yeah, actually, that probably would have been a pretty good plan. I think between Time Walk and Push, it's pretty close. So we go for Tinker, sacrificing Mox Jet. We go for Bite Steal. Then we pass turn. And our opponent doesn't play anything, which obviously we're pretty happy about. And then, yeah. Right. Yeah. So that was my mistake, actually, now that I remember it. And I actually think we might have been able to win this game if we hadn't made that mistake. So basically what happened is I forgot that when you tinker, obviously you're going to have to sacrifice an artifact, which means that you're going to get rid of your Mox Jet, and that means that you're only going to be able to have 2 lands on board, which means Time Walk doesn't actually work. Whereas if we had gotten pushed, we would have been able to cast it, could have removed this one Cold Serpent, would have been able to attack with Bicycle Colossus, and would that have worked? No. Yeah, sorry. I do think you should get pushed in that spot because your Time Walk's not going to work, but now that I remember it, the issue is that our opponent would have just full attacked on their turn, dealt us 6, and then we... No, I don't want to... Yeah, push would actually have been really good. Sorry, I just think it's important to analyze this. Trying to look back on my game. Right, so if you're gonna push here, we win the game, basically. So they can't attack on their turn, because then we just block Serpent. Well, no, basically that means if they had drawn a creature, but I don't think we actually win against a drawn creature in most spots. So yeah, if you're gonna push here, we are winning the game. So yeah, that was a bit of a misplay on my part. Yeah, interesting. Super interesting. Yeah, so I think if we get pushed in this spot, we actually win the game. Then a top deck wasteland, which means that even drawing a land wouldn't actually get us there. So we are dead, pretty much. There's really not a draw that exists that gets us there. And yeah, if we had drawn a push, we actually would have won. Wow, crazy stuff. Super interesting. And yeah, so we, like most moments in our life against chops, we don't get there and we just kind of lose. Interesting. So then they attack. They don't attack. They attack us. We block the Stone Cold Serpent. We're at 3, and then our opponent, I believe, has a Mistress Factory. So that means they can block our Colossus and we lose the game. Wow. Yeah. So we lose, and we are 3-2. And now that I think about it, probably could have won that. And then, super interesting. Yeah. So I think that this is a spot where my lack of experience, or maybe my hastiness, maybe my getting like a little flustered from their Serpent might have made a big difference in terms of how I played it. Right, so we attack because even if we hold back for blockers, it doesn't matter, and we discard the hand size, and that's it. And they attack us for 6, and we lose the game. Right, so on to round. Alright, so we are in round 6 of the challenge. We are 3-2 at the moment. And we are playing against Eruxus. I don't actually think I could find any information on Eruxus' deck. So, kind of going in blind. We are on the play. I gotta say, in this event, we definitely got pretty lucky in terms of getting to be on the play. I think we were on the play in 5 out of 6 rounds, maybe, so far. So we're 3-2, which means that if we win, we're locked for top 16, which is good enough for me, honestly. And right, on the play, top 16, and then yeah, and if we lose, we're pretty much almost locked for top 32. We have a really good hand, I would say. Like, we have access to fast mana, a defense grid, Ancestral Recall. Black Lotus actually used Ancestral Recall. Just generally a really good spot to be. Like, our hand is just really powerful, especially because of the recall. And, you know, like, even if you don't get to, like, do something insane with your Black Lotus, you're still leaving yourself open to, like, a Yawgmoth's Will Draw, and that's already good enough on its own. I think, yeah, our opponent took, like, quite a while to get here. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Yeah, so we, I'm actually surprised that I did it that way. Oh. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, right. So our opponent rolling into 1 card in hand. That's something I forgot. So we're playing against Dredge. When we kept our 7, we couldn't know that. But we're playing against Dredge and have 1 card in hand, which means that no matter what we do, we pretty much don't have to care. The only thing that I think I might have not considered it well enough is that they could have had a mental misstep, but in my opinion, our hand was good enough that I think we could probably make it work. Yeah, so we play our scrubland. Dark Ritual, Dark Ritual, Dark Ritual, Dark Petition. I think I might have played this a little loose, but so be it, you know. We get Amon's Will, and we're guaranteed to. We just get Black Lotus. We go for Tendrils. Sorry, just to be clear, we go for Amon's Will. We cast Lotus. We cast all our rituals. We Dark Petition, and oh wow, yeah. And then we get Tendrils, and we win the game. You know, it's just like that. Sometimes we deal 32 to our opponent, and on to game 2. So, obviously Dredge, as I said before, is an okay matchup. They definitely have access to some really busted draws against us, but it's usually kind of a fine matchup. So we start with we're on the draws. Obviously, we're not like super favored already, but we have a Lavinia, which I think helps us get there a lot of the time. So I keep, especially since we also have a duress on 1 to get some advantage, and if like depending on their hand, we can also go for Preordain, or we have a lot of options for turn 1, and we have a pretty good turn 2 Lavinia. So personally, I feel pretty happy with this keep. So our opponent mulligans to 5, which means that they have like way less chances to have a force, I believe. But they still do that. I mean, it just means their hand is a little bit more a little less likely to be able to reliably keep a force for a long time. That makes sense. And then we see that they have ley lines, which is pretty relevant. Then we draw Necro. Not very good in the spot, but it's not like the worst draw. I think there definitely was an argument to go for duress on this turn. I think that might have been a little loose on my part not to. Yeah, I don't like that play, me not duressing on this turn. Because if they had been at 2 cards, it means they draw. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I played this turn very well. I think I should have duressed on turn 1. Then we go for Lavinia, I believe. That's something that I definitely did a little too much. Wow, I don't. Oh, right. Yeah. So what happens here is that I get this idea in my head that I'm going to be able to go for a Tinker Kill with Vampire Tutor. Which means that if we were to cast Manifold on this turn, for example, we could just... Yeah. So then we were going to cast Manifold, and then on our next upkeep, we could have gone for Vampire Tutor, gone Tinker, and then cast Tinker. But then we go for top, which makes no sense. Wow, I played this turn so poorly. Wow. That is crazy. Yeah, so in my opinion, the right play in this spot is absolutely 100% to go for a Manifold. And I don't do that for some reason. I have no idea why I would go for top there. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Just a really poor play there. I guess what I told myself was that I'd rather have top on the board than like if I was gonna get Cabal Therapy. I really don't know. I think Manifold was the right play in that spot. Opponent, I'm not sure what they name. I don't think it shows you. Oh yeah, it does show you. So they remove Lavinia, which obviously is a pretty good plan on their part. Which kind of makes me think that they... No, they can't have... They can't have it. So on our upkeep, we ramp. And then... Oh my god, yeah, that is why I did that. Right. So my idea was that top meant that with a Tinker Kill, there's no way I could lose. And we go Blue Delta, we go for Scrubland, play our Mattervolt, we Tinker, we sack, and then they actually have Force, which quite surprised me because I think I somehow, yeah, they just kept 2 Forces that whole time. Yeah. So that was a pretty poor play on my part. Then top does allow us to go for that mystical tutor on return, so we're in a decent spot. But obviously our opponent's gonna get a lot of pressure on the board pretty quickly. So I do think I played this match pretty poorly, especially at the rest not being cast on turn 1. I think that was really, really poor on my part. Because I could have gotten Lavinia on the board and it would have made this game not even close. Our opponent just has like I mean, they just milled into our deck and they are very much in the driver's seat. We have mystical tutor, but it doesn't matter. So that's that. Not particularly close in this specific spot. That being said, I think we should have won this game anyway. Let's go into game 3. Oh, sorry, I think I actually didn't look at my sideboarding, but it's the same as before. Get 2 Lavinias, 3 Yixa Jailers, take out a Mental Misstep, take out a Twister. That's something I've heard a lot of people say, that Twister is really, really good against Reg. I get that on turn 1, but I think beyond turn 1 it's really not as good, and then therefore I'm not too into it. Hercule's Recall is awful against them, and Cabal Ritual is pretty free to cut most of the time. I would love to hear thoughts though on that. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. Sorry, on the Twister against Dredge. So here we keep our opponent is probably gonna wait a little bit before mulligan. So I keep this hand because we have 2 Yixa Jailers, so I think that it's very, very, very hard to not keep this. With the current hand that we have, like we can do so much. We can go for like Vamp, get a Lotus, go for Yixa Jailer, especially because our probe means we're gonna be able to draw what we get with tutor. Even if we don't do that, we can also probe for information, go for tutor on our next turn. We can still do other stuff. Like we can also get a Moxen. Like there's a ton of stuff we can do here. I'm not sure what we go for here, honestly. Here, I can't actually know what we got. But then we probe, we see Force of Will, and I think we go for tutor, and then they counter it, right? I think this is a fine line. My reasoning, I think, was that they mulled the 6, and so I felt like the odds were maybe a little lower. That being said, I think that's probably wrong. I don't know if I could play that turn 1 better. I think there's definitely some, because essentially like the other thing we could have done is just wait for them to Bazaar, and that means that on their turn they would have been at 7 down to, no, I don't think that, no, they've been 7. Yeah, I don't think that really helps you get there. Then we got really, really lucky and we top decked the Mox Emerald, so we got to cast Yixa Jailer, and we just won the game, really. Yixa Jailer, as I've said before, is absolutely lights out against Reg. You can't do absolutely anything about it. They do play Sickening Strolls in the board, but they can't afford to bring in against us. Theoretically, they could board it in, but it's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult for them to board it against us. And not every list runs it. And then we play a second Yixa Jailer, and we know that it's completely lights out. They do get a Hollow 1 on board, though, which is a little scary, but then we still have Yawgmoth's Will. That is going to allow us to get there. One thing we could have done, because I don't think we played our land this turn. Did we? No, we did. Yeah, so we don't do it this turn, but then next turn, what we get to do is... Oh, so so one thing we were afraid of, obviously, was that with them having 2 cards, they could theoretically have Force of Will. So instead, we just... so we were kind of worried about what we were going to do on next turn, but then they just Bazaar on return, and we know that there's no way we're going to lose here. Right. and then discard these 3 cards we knew they didn't have it in the first place. And then what we can do here basically is Yamatswell. Or I guess you should Cabal Ritual first. Right, sorry. So we Cabal Ritual, these 2 lands, then we go Yamatswell, then we are able to play Floodstrand to get a land, Lotus, then Vamp with Protection Probe to get our oh, sorry. Okay. Instead, what I did was go for Bicyclosis, because we were low on life because of the Hollow 1 attacks, and also dealing damage to ourselves with Vamp. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter. Colossus was the better card to get because it was an instant win. And yeah, that was that. Sorry about skipping to that. It didn't really matter. We just played our stuff out from our graveyard. We went for Vamp, we went for Protection Probe, we went for Tinker, and then we got Colossus on the board. And we win. Here, a little like funny tidbit story, I guess. A little story. How TGO tournaments work is that they have like certain caps where they change the number of rounds that they actually have for the tournament. The Vintage Challenge is not very popular, so most of the time it's like 64 or under, which means that it's going to be 6 rounds. And that's what I thought was actually going to happen. And then to my surprise, or I guess, I find out that I remember that we have 65 people, but I didn't remember that on this specific round that I won. So I was sure that I was locked for top 16. So I was super over the moon. I was like super happy. I was like, awesome. I get to actually make money from this. I was over the moon. I was super glad, super proud of myself. And then to my dismay, I remember that we were 65 people.
All right, so
after
around
7
rounds,
and I am
so
not
we are very
eager to play for top 16. And I do think that if we had been 5-2, we actually could have made it on to top 8 around 7, if I remember correctly. It was a while ago though. Right, so we get this hand. Hand's completely awful. We're just not going to be casting spells. It's just not going to work out. There's no way this hand works out. So we ship it. Yeah, there's just no way this hand works. Then with this hand, again, no way it works either. We don't have any mana. Colored mana, I guess. Then we mold a 5. I mean, this hand is fine, but it's really not very exciting. Well, yes, it gets us to a Necro on turn 1, like a tutor, so it's really not that bad. It's still pretty far from being there. We have to ship to the rest, unfortunately, because it's just too low impact, and we have to ship the Ponder. Again, like, we're mulling the 5. We have to keep 2 lands to be able to actually get there. So we Ritual, Necro. We get 5 cards. Again, I think I should have gone to 8. I was way too conservative for my Necros that tournament. Going to 14 is not a liability. Then our opponent has a pretty crazy start. Again, I did not know our opponent was on, so that didn't influence my mulliganing. Not that it would have with those hands, but yeah. So we know our opponent's on chops. Then they cast Loathsome Golem, which we're obviously not very happy to see. Because again, we are in game 1, which means that if we're able to get the Ballistic Citadel kill, we're still quite a ways far behind. So here so this is something that now that I think about it, was it everything wrong? So how should I actually this? I think that first and foremost, I think I forgot that Black Lotus did not get attacks from Loathsome Golem. I just honestly, I think for the longest time I thought that Loathsome Golem was like a Thorn effect, but obviously that's not what it is. So that's the first mistake. That being said, the only thing we really could have gone would have been Tinker. Like, theoretically, we could have gone like Dark Petition, Yogwell, and then try to make something happen. But like with a Loathsome Golem, it's like really not that likely. And the issue with Tinker is that even if we do, I mean, no, it's not that bad. Like, we do get the Chain of Vapor, and like we probably had outs. So I think I should have Demonic Tutored on this turn. Actually, no, that's not how that works. I think I should have Preordained, I guess. Yeah, so essentially doing this play was really, really dumb. Because what it meant was that the only way that I was ever going to get there was if my Preordained found me specifically a mana rock, and I didn't need these lands, which meant that I probably should have just gone for like Necro for like a ton, because then I would have been able, like, I played this specific board very, very poorly in my opinion. I think I was just a little too afraid of the damage I was going to take. I figured my opponent might go for Mistress Factory. Then again, it didn't really matter in this spot because their opponent got the Wasteland, and which meant that we were very, very much choked on mana. I still think that we should have either Preordained on our turn or gone for Necro. The issue is they had Sphere, so we had no chance to actually win this game. I do think I played that wrong, I will say that much, but I think we had no chance of winning that game. And that's it. We could have gone Hercule's Recall, theoretically, but it wouldn't make the difference with their hand. So we're just dead. No way you win this game. That being said, like, we still go for it. Like, we go for Black Lotus, we go for Demonic Tutor, we go for to get Tinker, then we have to pass turn. I'm just gonna speed through this because I think it's not very relevant. It's just us spinning wheels, hoping we somehow get there, but the chances are pretty much 0 or lower. We do get Ballista Citadel, but again, I mean, I'll just go over it quickly. Like, we were able to, on our turn, go for Manifold, then go for Tinker, and then we were able to get, like, Ballista Citadel, but the issue is that, like, the only way we're going to be able to get there is if we just consistently find mana off of this, which is just not going to happen. I think I make an error in my, like, math, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, basically I go for, with Dark Petition, I go for Yawgmoth's Will. No, that can't be it. I just think I don't get anything and I just lose. Anyway, we lose this game. Doesn't even matter. Like, we just spin our wheels. We try to go for Ballista Citadel because it's the only way we have of winning. And we just don't really get there in terms of, like, being able to generate mana to keep up through the Sphere resistance. So that's game 1. Sideboarding. We sideboard in the 3 Hercule's Recalls, the 2 Fiddle Pushes. We sideboard out Time Twister, sideboard out Mental Misstep, still fine with those. Sideboard out 2 Defense Grids and an LED. And this time we sideboard out Cabal Ritual and Lightside Diamond. And sorry, one last thing we sideboarded in was Vital Colossus to go for that win. Here, we have quite a good hand, I would say. It's not amazing, but it's fine. Like, with Gitaxian Permanent Duress, but with our current hand, like, we're gonna be able to go for Dark Petition kill pretty consistently. If they have a Sphere, we're able to remove it or Duress. Like, our hand's fine, right? Like, it's not completely amazing. It's not like the nuts, but it's probably gonna get us there. And then we see it. The one thing that, like, blows my mind is that they also have ley lines. This is not the same opponent as we face. So that's why I said, like, a couple of pilots in the tournament did go for ley lines, which is something that I definitely, as a DPS pilot, did not expect, or even as a vintage player, I guess. So then I know that my hand is just a lot worse, like a lot worse. But I kept, cause, so I go for Tyson targeting myself. We found a land, which I'm pretty happy about. Hey, sorry about that. So we play our Mana Vault just to be able to fight through, like, Sphere effects better. Opponent has a Mana Crypt, they have a Mox Pearl. Sorry, I'll remove that. My bad. They have a Soul Ring, so we know that they have a really, really insane hand. They have a Total Hand Academy, and then I know that it's over. I know there's no way to win this game. Opponent names Manifold. And they play Harpoon Ravager. And yeah, like already from this hand, you can already tell there's just no way we're getting there. Like, we're just so far back in the game. While they don't have like a taxing effect, again, we're just really, really far behind. Our Duresses are completely dead. We play our top because it's the only thing we really can afford to deploy, and like it might be able to help us find the mana we need to go for a Dark Petition kill. It's not very likely, but there's odds that we get there. Like if we're able to find like a Dark Ritual off of the top, we could probably get there. And then our opponent top deck Sphere, so we're done. Yeah. Then our opponent's able to apply like a 2-turn clock, I believe. Not even a 2-turn clock. I don't know where they go for this, but it doesn't really matter. Again, they're gonna get there. Like at our top 3, we know that it would have gone there, which feels pretty bad. But we have to go for lands because like Ritual's not gonna get us there anymore because of Sphere. And I think we just scoop on the next turn because we know it's over. Yeah, we have Urkel's Recall, which like would be good enough theoretically, but we know there's no way that we're gonna get there. So actually, I think about it. I think what Urkel's Recall. Oh right, sorry. Yeah, they have Leyline on board, so Urkel's Recall's not gonna do anything, and yeah, we just lose round 7. So here again, I think that highlighted like another issue with the Shops matchup, which is that they can afford to play Leyline. I think Shops can afford to like be pretty loose with their sideboarding, and I think that's why they're able to fit cards like Leyline of Sanctity into their board when they expect like a lot of DPS. And I think that's really, really problematic for us because that makes circles a lot worse, and that's why I guess I'll close this. That's why when I was changing the list, I decided to remove one of the pushes because again, like I said, I didn't think push was that good, and I decided to go for Fragmentize, just to at least have like another thing to interact with Shops, and I felt like Fragmentize was better to interact with Shops than Chain, like a second Chain. And we have access to White Splash, so I felt like might as well try to take advantage of it. Obviously, it's a lot. It's worse because you can't use it instant speed, but in my opinion, it's better because I think Shops can almost always afford to sack a land to interact with you, so I think that Fragmentize in that case is better. No, I don't think that's a good enough reasoning. I think my reasoning for Fragmentize in this spot was that essentially the issue with Chain is that and the issue with even Urkel's Recall in a certain way is that doing it instant speed, which is how you want to take advantage of it, often against Shops is not really going to work as well because they're able to apply a quick clock on you, which means that if you do Urkel's Recall to like save yourself, they can just recast their spells on their turn, which means that in my opinion, I think Fragmentize is better because it's actual removal, and again, on top of that, Chain does allow for some. It does allow for them to like actually interact with you in a way that could benefit them. So I think Fragmentize is better in that slot. And I don't think there's really a single matchup where I felt like I wanted to bring in another Chain. Whereas Fragmentize, I do think I feel pretty happy about it. That's like one change that I made. And again, another thing in Shops, I do think you need more lands because of all their wastelands. And that's why I felt like going, and I think there are other wasteland decks like Punishing deck or whatever, not Punishing deck, for 4-color like deck, where I think that having a 13 land is probably good. And or overall, like I did hear a lot of people using the fact that they played Library. No, using the fact that Library counted as the 13 land to justify playing it in your 60, I guess. And I felt like that showed, in my opinion, that maybe having a 39 could be worth it. So that's why I've been experimenting with it, but I'm not sure about that. And if I were to cut it, I would probably go for a Mental Misstep or a Collective Brutality, because I think Collective Brutality is pretty good. Or maybe even a Defense Grid. I think those are 3 cards you could consider. And yeah, and since then I've upped my Lavinia account to 3, because I think Lavinia is really, really good. I've had like pretty good experiences with it. So overall, let's just go back to this list, this old list. Sorry, I'll try to make it less convoluted. This list felt fine at the time. I was a little frustrated because I just did not expect the Leyline Sanctity plan. And I think that if I had, I could have gotten much better results. Or I don't know. I just think it was unfortunate. I guess I should say. And I did feel like I had maybe a little too much stuff for interactive decks when I pretty much only faced proactive decks in that whole thing. 1 bug deck and that's it. So maybe like having that many defense grids was probably a little overboard. So I felt that was bad. Again, like I said, the 2 fatal pushes felt pretty poor. And not having the list pedal, and that was a big reason that I felt like even more pushed to buy the Deltas to be able to have access to more cards that I wanted, the more expensive cards, like Lotus Petal, is because Lavinia and Ixojator even really, really get us like so much better when you're able to actually turbo them out. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of ways you can do that in Vintage. Like it's Moxen or Black Lotus, or the last thing is actually using Lotus Petal. So I felt like that was definitely worth it to get better. And Cabal Ritual was definitely one card that felt like the worst card in my deck, but necessary. So I felt absolutely fine removing one of them. And Mental Misstep, while I do think that it helped a lot in that event, I mean not a lot, but it helped quite a bit in that event, and I've had pretty good experiences with it. I definitely don't feel very bad about removing it. But still, overall, it was a list I really liked. I was very happy to put in this Underground Sea instead of that Watergrave that I had that I showed earlier. And yeah, looking over the matches, I do feel like I could have played a lot of them a lot tighter. But I think that's one thing with EPS, and maybe even Vintage as a whole, is that there are a lot of ways to play better. Like there are a lot of tiny little corner cases. There are a lot of like micro decisions. There are a lot of like strange interactions, or a lot of like weird board states, weird hands, weird mulligans. That especially because of like the nature of like restriction, how it affects deck building. I think there's a lot of difficulty in the format, and a lot of things, a lot of small edges that you can accrue. And while I think that's awesome, and it makes the format like more exciting as a player, I do think it makes it a lot more of a daunting task to get into it, and it makes it a lot more difficult to be a very, very good Vintage player. So yeah, I learned a lot from looking over those games. I hope you, the viewers, also found it interesting. While I don't think I had the tightest play, I still think it was interesting to see a bunch of those matchups. Yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. I hope you guys liked the list. If there are any questions, any comments, any advice, any feedback really that you want to give, feel free to reach me either in the comments, or I am in the Vintage Discord if anybody's in that, or the Vintage Streamers Discord. So if you want to reach me on there. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. And maybe I'll make another one of these in the foreseeable future, I guess.